Greetings, dear ones. I am Kryon of Magnetic Services. The door opens quickly with my partner, and the reason is that I never leave. He has become so used to the energy of Kryon that I'm always on the other side of the door. Perhaps this is difficult for you to imagine, but it's no different than speaking to your higher self. We have always invited humanity to channel in many ways. You may call it whatever you choose, but when you look at the great art of the planet, can you doubt that it was from God? It was channeled. When you listen to the greatest music on your planet, do you understand that it came flowing through the pipeline? This energy is always available, always part of the system. For you, it has been one full day since I last spoke, since the last communication. But for me, it was just a moment ago. So now we continue the teaching on this second day. In review, what we were speaking of was the system. We told you that it is a confusing place, that interdimensionally you call the other side of the veil. We told you that it isn't a place at all, but rather an interdimensional state of energy, one that you can put yourself into any time you choose. But because of your 3D teachings, you want it to be a place. It's what your reality wants to see. But if you remember the teaching, you will now understand that this interdimensional energy is always around you. And when you put yourself in that space, it often looks chaotic and confusing. When a situation exists, when you're in that state, you cannot make sense of what is going on. Now let me start drawing the logic for you that seems to be missing. In that space that is interdimensional lies all the potentials of you. These are the potentials of what you will do, who you will meet, and what is your purpose in life. The reason these things look confusing because none of them have been manifested yet. The logic is this. When you go to that place on purpose, when you engage the interdimensional energy, you are then drawing lines of energy that look for and find the potentials you are asking for. And whereas you might think that it does not make sense, there are others who are doing the same thing. And where these lines meet is the synchronicity. I don't expect you to understand this, for it is in interdimensional language. But I say it anyway so that those of you who are in this state of meditative reading will have it shown to you. Yesterday, we told you this day would be a practical day where we would get to talk about humans in the system, and so we will. We're going to start by giving you 6 postulates. We hesitate to say rules, so we'll say that they're helping hints. These are hints to help you manifest and work with the system. By manifesting the system, we mean to actually get in touch with it and use it. At no time will we ask you to understand it. You have heard so many times the phrase, God works in mysterious ways. Well, it's not only mysterious to the 3D creature. There is actually great logic and purpose within it. It's not mysterious at all. Some of these postulates may sound familiar, for we have used them before in other lessons. However, this is the first time we have put them together in this form. The first postulate is the most important one. Make no assumptions about anything. This means you have to throw away your 3-dimensional concept of how things work when it comes to you in spirit. When it comes to working the system, make no assumption about anything. This is the hardest thing a human being can do, even in profound meditation. Humans make assumptions. They sit and they open the door and they try to figure out where the voices are coming from. Right away we say again, don't try to understand it. Instead we say, simply use it. When you ask to be shown the path, do not assume you know what it will be. Do not assume you know how it will be shown. Assume nothing and move forward and be surprised. Number 2, see yourself as part of the chaos. You do not stand alone as a 3-dimensional creature that suddenly is placed into this soup of potential. Instead, you are one of the potentials in the soup. So we are asking you to claim that you are part of the system. Sometimes we say, own this, or make it part of you. Some say, well, that sounds pretty easy, I'll do it. Well, it's not easy, for you always see yourself apart from God. You say, I am here, God is there, I'm trying to get to God. We're saying instead that you must see yourself as part of God, and therefore part of the system. Then, number 3, don't be afraid to step into it. You do this in many ways. We have told you for many years that the best thing a human could ever ask is, God, tell me what it is I need to know. This is you stepping into the system. It's an activator of crossing over into the seeming chaos. It's an acknowledgement that you are ready for something you can do even without understanding what it is. So the first three postulates are all about you, making no assumptions, owning the system, and stepping into it sound like easy things. But you have to understand that most human beings don't do it this way and have trouble with all of them. Again, the concept of God is that you are apart, separate entities, and are not separate from God. There you sit on earth believing the teachings that the energy of spirit is separate and apart from a human. However, if you're going to use the system each day of your life, you must place yourself within it. This doesn't make sense with anything you have been taught, but it must now become your reality. Therefore, self-worth is going to come into play, isn't it? For the human who feels they are worthless will never be able to come to grips with the facts that they are part of God. The next, number 4, is this: trust and follow your first instinct. This rule is to trust and follow your first intuition. How many times have you had a situation where you said, oh, if I'd only done what I had thought first? This is actually part of the system, and that's the way it occurs to you. It is often the very first instinct you'll have about a situation. Some call it intuition, but it's much more than that. Some of you must learn to do this, for many of you are not used to what the first instinct even feels like. So part of the system is beginning to understand what intuition and instinct looks and feels like. Well, Kryon, how do we do that? How about asking for it? Dear Spirit, let me recognize the signs when I feel them and hear them and realize what they are. The promise is you'll always get them, but how bright they appear in your mind is up to you. There are certain human beings who actually suppress their instincts. They don't like them, and they get in the way of their logic. Many do not think with their hearts at all and only with their brains, but quite often the first instinct is a heart connection process. The next one, number 5, is so misunderstood. Gone are the days when the human being sits and waits for God to do something. The system is all around you. It's ready to facilitate your needs. But if you never open the door, nothing is ever going to happen. Yet humans continue to pray. I want this healing so bad, they say. I want these things so much. I'd like a partner in my life. I'd like to know what I'm supposed to do with my life. So they spend all the time in prayer and meditation every day, asking, never leaving the house, constantly in prayer. That's a great way to meet someone, isn't it? You got to step out and push open the doors. So here's what number 5 is. There must be action on your part. And it comes in many forms and honors whatever your culture supports. But in general, it means leaving the house and going places where you can interact with the potentials of the synchronicity. No matter what you're looking for, it will involve the system of humanity. Therefore, you can't sit in one room alone and expect answers. Well, many say, Dear Spirit, show me what it is I'm supposed to know. Then they sit there and nothing happens, and nothing happens, and nothing happens. So in desperation, they get up and go to the esoteric bookstore. They're walking along in the aisle and a book falls on their head. God just spoke. Then they often say, this is the book I've been looking for. What a revelation to me. Thank you, God. And this is how it works. You've got to get up and go, and when you go, number 6, the big one, expect synchronicity. Synchronicity is defined as energies that align with purpose. These situations look like accidents, but they are not. Listen, this is the key. You have heard that there are no accidents, but there are those outside of your belief system who say, oh, that's crazy, that's not right. Synchronicity looks and appears like coincidence. It often looks like an accident, but it's not. It is you at the right time, at the right place, with the potentials aligned that you asked for. But if you're going to have synchronicity and aligned potentials, you've got to be there to experience them, don't you? So you've got to take some action, whether it's a phone call or it's an electronic communication, whatever it is you work with your body. You've got to put yourself in places where the synchronicity and the system can work. And I say it for those in these rooms and those who are hearing and reading now. There are those of you who still will not do this, for you believe there's some kind of sacredness in staying put and just praying. Instead, try to understand the balance of things. There's a time for asking and a time for receiving. They are done in separate places. If you spend all your time in the asking place, no receiving will occur. Those are postulates. Now I'm going to give you some practical things using these postulates. We're going to discuss some situations and show you how Spirit works. Some of you know these things, but perhaps you've never put them together. The first thing, the most difficult for human beings, is timing. Yesterday we said that your clock is not God's clock. We also told you that it's impossible to apply a 3D time frame to an interdimensional potential. It's frustrating to humanity that God delivers things not when you ask for them, but only when you need them. You see, to us it doesn't make any sense whatsoever to give you an answer to put in your pocket, because when you get to a place where you thought you needed it and pull out of your pocket, it's the wrong answer. Instead, it must be the scenario of synchronicity and the energy of the moment. Let me tell you about a specific human being. He thought he was using the system and doing his best. Actually, he didn't really understand how it worked, and he had made some assumptions. This human being had a task at hand. He was a very gentle man, and he worked as a boss at a factory. He was in charge of many workers, and he was a good supervisor, for he loved his employees, knew their families, and respected all of them. He was about to have a challenge, however, since he was going to have to lay off one of the employees. Instructions had come from his supervisor that he had to cut back the workforce by one man. Therefore, one of the men under supervision had to be terminated from his job. Now, here's a common, practical attribute of life. You're walking into a situation and you want to know how to handle it. It's a good request, is it not? It's an honorable request of God. Dear Spirit, I know this man. I love this man. I know his family. Please give me guidance. What am I going to say? How shall I handle this for him? What's the best way? I'm anxious about it. And being a spiritual man, he went on his knees and asked. He made an appointment with the employee, and he knew he had to do his deed within 3 days. But he received no answer at all. He received no intuition, which is what he depended on, and he had no instinct. Instead, it seemed like God was on vacation, and it wasn't even August. No answer. The second day, he went on his knees again. I know I've been listening, but I'm receiving nothing at all. And I've got to know because I have an appointment tomorrow. Dear Spirit, give me the information so I'll be able to do this in an honorable way. How is the best way to approach this? Nothing. No answer at all. Now, here is where the human being becomes frustrated. Well, I'm stuck. God is not listening. God doesn't care about me. I've got something important coming up, and I've been praying, and there's just no answer at all. That's where some humans give up. But they don't know about the system. If you ever get no answers at all, what do you think is going on? I'll tell you that in the system, the place you call chaos, there are many things happening. There is no 3D answer except one. Be still. Be still, my family, and trust in Spirit. The third day came. The employee came into his office and sat down. Still no answer. Supervisor was sweating. Here it was, within seconds of having to do his deed, and there was no answer, no guidance except to be still. Finally, he looked at the man in the chair. He was smiling, as he always did. The supervisor thought about the man's children, and his heart hurt. The job meant so much to the man, he stalled and offered him some coffee. Then they sat down, and the supervisor gathered his thought. But before he could speak, the employee spoke first. I'm so glad you called me into the office. I don't know how to tell you this, but I have found a better job. I'm so sorry. I know we're friends and you count on me, but I'm going to have to leave the factory. It will make a big difference to my family. The supervisor smiled, and then he knew. The answer was not in how he was supposed to prepare this man. It was how to prepare himself. That's how it works. That's called synchronicity. Yet you cannot begin to understand what appears to be chaos or chance. There'd be a temptation for that human being to say, well, what a coincidence, not giving any credit to God or himself, but the reality is that it was in the system all along. Make no assumptions about timing. We've told you this from the beginning. When human beings ask for something, they feel they've purchased a ticket on a train. Then they tap their toe, expecting the train to come with God in it. It doesn't work that way. It's not a ticket at all. It's a request for synchronicity without an assumption of timing. We could say the same thing about the delivery of answers. That is the other thing that human beings do. They ask for something and then they expect a complete answer. That's what you get in 3D, isn't it? When you go to the store and purchase an automobile, you get the whole thing, don't you? Isn't that what you would expect? You'd probably object if they only gave you the tires today and the vehicle tomorrow. But that's the way synchronicity works, piecemeal. What we are saying is that many times the answer comes in pieces, and you're required to connect them together for the whole thing. Don't make any assumptions of how the answer is going to get to you, or that it's going to be complete or incomplete, or even where it's going to come from. Kryon, what is my path? What am I supposed to be doing? I want to know my purpose in life. We hear this so often. Oh, dear human beings, the very question is so 3D of you. You've made up your mind that you have one path. How singular. Is that all you do? One thing. You are supposed to come into the planet and do one thing. You're spending your life asking Spirit, what is the one thing I'm supposed to do? I'm really looking for it. I don't know what it is yet. It's like you're going to find some prize on the road that has your name on it. Then you would work it for the rest of your life. Oh, dear human being, you have no idea of who you are. Your potentials are so complex. We have said this before to you, but you now need to hear it in the context of this teaching. The sacred path that you have in your DNA is for today. And the irony is that you may very well be on it. You may be doing it, participating in it, while at the same time you make assumptions of what is supposed to be. So you're sitting on the floor crying out to God, what is my path? The system needs anchors of light. Where do you live? Where do you work? Is it difficult there? Maybe that's your path, to be in a difficult place holding the light. Much light should be in the area where it's tough, to create sacredness where there is darkness, to hold joy and to be the only person in the area to do it, because that's what you're good at. And while all the while you say, I am doing nothing for anyone, I've got to know my path, got to know my path. Yet the human is frustrated. Never understanding the path is what they're already doing so well, and tomorrow it may change. Every day of your life, you hold a place for the light of God to come in and shine. It's often in the places where there is no one else but you who holds the light. Did you ever think of that? There are as many paths as there are days in the year, and that is synchronicity. So what is your passion? If you follow it, that's where your path will lead. Your path is changeable and not one thing, yet many times humans make up their minds they will be one thing. I'm going to be a healer, they say, and they think that's what God wants. They've got it all figured out. They've made an assumption, however, a singular one, like they've had some kind of meeting with God and God agrees. Unknown to them, they did this agreement all by themselves. God wasn't even there. And then when they hit obstacles, they say, how can this be? I'm supposed to be a healer. They made the assumption that what they see is, therefore, their path. There's no synchronicity in that. They're not part of the system, you see. They're not following the system. Instead, they're plowing a trough of their own vision in 3 dimensions. Sometimes this is difficult to explain to 3D creatures who work every day in that reality, to feel the difference between what they have visualized for yourself and what the system has for you. So the next question would be, what is the voice of God? Dear Spirit, I've been waiting for answers. I need specifics. Then the humans will think they're going to hear something in their brains. Perhaps somehow it'll be written on the wall. I will tell you again, the reason we tell you to follow your first instinct is that the vehicle for communication is intuition. This intuition is a product of synchronicity. It is very real way of God, the system, communicating with humanity. Humans don't like it because it appears as though they thought of it, so it isn't from God. After all, they've waited for an answer from God, not themselves. Some of you get a thought in your brain and say, well, I just thought that myself. It can't be God. Well, that's exactly who it is. But that's you using the synchronicity because you gave intention to step into it. Don't you deserve to receive these messages in that way? Aren't you sacred? Intuition is the way. That's how it works. But again, the assumption is that God is big and that you are small. Therefore, what you think personally is not what God is telling you you think. Get used to intuition being the answer. When my partner began this process of channeling, even though he had opened the door for Kryon, even though he received messages, he didn't believe it. Even with validation from those who knew the truth, in his intellectual mind he said, I'm making it up. This is because when you channel, it feels like it involves the human brain. Well, it does. It has to. It involves all your DNA, your emotional state, and your intellect, all connected to Source. He finally let go and realized the channel was also using his own sacredness. That's when it got clear. Trust your intuition, for those are the words of God. Some have even said it is messages from what many have called the Holy Spirit. This is another way of saying the higher self. Many belief systems have different names for the same energy, but it's always about how you receive the messages you see. You're part of the system. There have also been many questions about business. I told you this message would be practical, so I'll give you 2 examples. Here's advice for those who are trying to co-create jobs so you can help develop the abundance needed within a society to be able to live. First, dear one, God is not in the dark. God knows the society that you live in. Spirit understands that you need abundance in order to stay in the place you are, to purchase the food, for the transportation or more. God is not against money. As soon as you understand that, you'll be far more peaceful. In fact, it is up to you to manifest, through synchronicity, the abundance you need to live. In other words, money is part of the system. It is as divine as any other part of your path when you treat it spiritually. Did anyone ever tell you that Spirit wanted you to suffer a little? Perhaps you're supposed to walk to work with no vehicle. Maybe you shouldn't eat. Perhaps you shouldn't stay out in the cold for a while because you can't find a home. What kind of light worker is that? When others look at you, do they say, "I'd like to be just like him, destitute, unhappy, hungry, and cold"? That doesn't make any sense, does it? No, it's just the opposite. Spirit wants you in abundance, and abundance is defined as sustenance for each day at a time, in joy. How can you hold the light if you are in a survival mode? What is your source of abundance? Do you worry about it, or do you consider part of the system? Do you give it to Spirit, or do you sequester it because you don't think God understands money? Blessed is the human being who integrates everything in their society and themselves and understands what it is divine. For these are the light workers who are healthy, balanced, and mobile. They are the ones who make a difference on the planet. That's business. Money is only a challenging energy when it is hoarded or the source of worry or not within your control. That's when it becomes a god unto itself and takes on the challenging energy assigned to it. The invitation is to see it as simply another thing in your toolbox, like love and compassion and joy. Fear of not having it will create its absence. Another part of the system has to do with partnering with someone in an endeavor. You'd better use the system that I've given you, which is synchronicity and potential. The advice is to find somebody who spiritually loves you. This partnership will last as long as you choose, and there will never be betrayal. Surround yourself with those who love your heart, and the partnership will endure. And in speaking of financial things in business, I'm speaking of whatever you do in your society that is commercial. Oh, that's odd. Kryon is talking about commercial things. Yes, I am. If you live in the society, it's part of you. If you live in the culture, it's part of you. So why not use the divine tools you have made to work as part of you? There is no separation of commercial things and spiritual things to God. They are all part of your walk from day to day and are seen as part of the energy of your time on earth. Those who wish to separate them and call them sacred and some less sacred are not considering the wholeness of your task on the planet. For again I say that in order to hold the energy of light on this planet, you must see everything you do as sacred, and everywhere you walk is part of the system of God. Relationships are difficult, and again, there is an assumption of the one for you. But it may not be that way. It may be many relationships over a period of time that synchronistically put themselves together with you for a purpose that only becomes obvious later. Let me reveal some things about relationship, a revelation about romance. Many of you have your partners existing in your lives. Others do not. So this is for those who do not, and also for the wisdom of those who do, so they can teach their children about the system. Have you ever wondered why it is that you are so individually different about those who you choose? For those looking for a partner, you have an idea of what is acceptable, what is not. Where do those attributes come from? For each of you are so different from each other. Now I'm going to reveal something. In this system, there are synchronicities and potentials of the partner who might be out there. So within your own consciousness, you are given the desires that are meant to match the synchronicities of those who are out there, and therefore the setup is complete. That's who you're looking for, and that's why. And all of you are so different, but that's where the desire for special attributes come from. It's not just a personal choice, it's instinct. That is a potential out there that looks just like the ones you are imagining, and I mean in all ways. What their heart looks like, what their conscience looks like, all things. How it makes you feel. It's not just how you feel about what you want. Your personal choices have been placed there because you asked for this. Let me tell you about Mary. Mary makes assumptions, just like everyone else. She's a light worker, and she's single, and she's looking for a partner. So Mary prayed to God, I want a partner. I can just visualize him. He's got these big brown eyes, his eyebrows are a little bushy, and he's got a beard. I like men with hair. Pretty specific, wasn't it? Mary knew, however, that she was watching for a man who looked like this. God, bring me this man. I'll be patient. I'll wait. Bring in a man like this. Indeed, a man showed up in her life, and he said, I've been watching you. We're having a family dance, a get-together. It's a festival for our family, and we do it once a year. I don't know how to ask you this, but would you come to the dance with me? Well, this man didn't have bushy eyebrows, no big brown eyes. He wasn't her type at all. He didn't have a beard either. Normally, Mary would just say no. After all, she knew who she was looking for. She'd say no because that wasn't what she felt God would bring her. But somewhere Mary had heard the information. Make no assumptions about anything. She thought very hard about this, but she did not want to lead this man on. She did not want to give him hope that she would be his partner. She did not want to say yes because of this, but then she didn't want to hurt his feelings. So Mary made a decision to go. All right, can't hurt. I'll go to the dance, she said. Yes, I'll go. They arrived at the family gathering, and the man who asked her was suddenly very shy. Mary, I have not been honest with you, he said. Please forgive me. But I have an extremely shy brother who really wanted you here so he could meet you. Mary looked around, and there was this man with dark blue eyes, bushy eyebrows, and a beard. Mary smiled and thought to herself, I got everything right but the eyes. I'll take him. And indeed it was him. Do you get the point? You can't make the normal, singular assumptions you're prone to make. Also, you're not always 100% correct in what you see either, but you're close enough to know when it's right. In a 3D decision, Mary could have said no to the man. She could have thought to herself, I'm waiting for the right guy. But she honored synchronicity. Those who try to figure it all out in 3D don't know about the system, you see. They really don't understand the synchronicity, dear ones. Don't try to understand it, just use it. Watch for the invitations and take them, knowing that there is not some simple singular path that is going to be given. Many humans are needed to lead you to the potential of the final goal, but not unless you allow yourself the flexibility to go when you should go. Let your intuition serve you in these things. We're almost finished. Co-creation is one of the hardest things to explain. We can give you many stories, but the rules are the same, and the first one is to make no assumptions. There is a man who is trying to co-create a car for himself. He could not go to the car store, for he could not afford a new one. He couldn't even afford a used one at the place where they sell those. He needed a miracle. God, give me a car. I need it to go to work. I need to manifest a vehicle. Listen to this. For many of you have been exactly in this situation before. Practical information. Here's how the system worked. He had a friend who said, I don't know about a car, but I've got a guy who can give you a ride to work. And that's where most human beings would say, well, no, I don't need a ride. I need a car. I'll be wasting time if I just get a ride. I need to find a car. But this human being knew about the system and about synchronicity. So he took the opportunity and he took the ride to work. When he struck up a conversation with the man who was giving the ride, the man said, Did you know this car is for sale? You know the rest of the story. Of course, he bought the driver's car. That is how spirit works. Outside the box of logic, within something that looks like chaos, is a beautiful answer. This is the way the strands of the lattice connect the potential of energy. And for a human being to use it, all they have to do is understand they are part of it and begin to manifest it. But for most human beings, it looks illogical and even foolish. It doesn't seem right that they could be accidental answers that you can plan on. You see, there's a system, and it's ready to manifest for you. Oh, there'll be challenges, and there'll be learning. Isn't that the way everything is? But the answer to so many of your co-creative efforts are already floating there in the system, if you allow it to work for you. We're about to close and leave this place. It's no accident that we sit in Spain, for the synchronicity is clear. Those of you who met this weekend are part of what my partner calls the team of Kryon, and they are here through synchronicity. It's not coincidence. It's also not an accident that you're in the chair listening to this. So how about that healing? Are we ready yet? Are you starting to understand yet? Perhaps you didn't just come to get a healing from Kryon. Perhaps there's something here you're supposed to meet who has an answer. You came for one reason, but you leave realizing another. Did you go out of your way to meet someone you didn't know today? It's not too late. But you have the concept now that perhaps in this group many have come synchronistically to meet each other. Perhaps they have the answer to help you on your current path. Did you take advantage of it or not? This is human free choice. But I'll tell you, the system is grand, and it's working right here. Blessed is the one who has come, for the healing for it is given. And you will know it, dear one, for it is awakening into your old soul a realization that says, indeed, I am divine. And you've realized it's surrounded by family who love you, and that's the message of Kryon. Leave this place changed, differently than you came in. Understand that this place is not where Kryon is. It's not where spirit is. It's not where your lineage is. Your spiritual lineage is where you are on the planet, available at any time, anywhere. Kryon is like that, and spirit is like that. It's the family who you have called on today. That is why it works, dear human beings. And so it is that the team leaves this place. Did you feel the love of one human for another? Did you feel it cutting through cultural understanding and language? Because that is the purpose of the meeting, to bring you to a place where you realize that what you all have in common is that you are all part of the family of God. And it's hard to leave. These are times when you allow Kryon into your 3D reality for just a moment. And it's beautiful for us. And so it is. And so ends the Lightworker Handbook.